Happy New Year! Should all acquaintance with the fair and then we watch TV? I don't know the words. No one knows the words. If you know the words, what's wrong with you? No, you shouldn't know the words.
You don't have to start off with a show song if you don't know the words.
I do have to. It's the new year. That's that's what we do. I always find it funny in movies or TV when they're like all these people are start singing it at New Year's. I'm like, no, there's no way there's not like one person at a given party that will know the words to it.
Mhm. Also, we don't want to forget our acquaintances because there's some of our listeners.
That's true. We don't want to forget our acquaintances. That's why would anyone want that? Because this is TV guys. I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
And we have had a great year. It has been a lot of fun. This is our first full year of having all TV guys. So we came at you all year long like a spider monkey on steroids.
Is that your way to shoehorn in a Spider-Man reference?
No, it's not. Which, by the way, Spider-Man was pretty great. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It was fantastic. But that's not what this episode is about, because we're not going to spoil anything about Spider-Man, and we're not even really going to talk about Spider-Man. We're going to talk about the best moments of the year.
That's good, because I still haven't seen it.
There you go. Over on Movies on a Monday, we talk about like similar things. I always love doing like yearly recaps. We do a similar thing each year on Movies on a Monday that we're doing today, where we talk about like the top scenes of the year. We also talk about like the top movies of the year. And definitely Spider-Man is on there. But for top scenes of the year, this is something that I always have fun with, because it's like, yeah, anyone can talk about, oh, I love these couple movies of the year, but I love to go back and like, this is a scene for just a specific moment in TV or movies that stood out. I was like, oh, this is so cool. It stuck with you for the whole year. So we've got a couple scenes that we're going to talk about, moments on TV that stood out. And yes, I was able to come up with ones that were not all Marvel shows, because good gravy, Marvel has had 5 shows this year.
Wait, 5? Oh, yeah, it's 5.
Yeah, we could spend like the whole episode just talking about. I was like, I'm only going to do one. Spoiler alert, I'm only going to do one from Marvel shows. And like, what was the best moment from all 5 shows? And that was hard. I'll actually probably mention in honorable mentions maybe a couple other moments, but I think I got it down to one. So,
well, I have one Marvel as well, so maybe one of mine is one of your honorable mentions.
I had a feeling that you would too. It's like that was there was so much new Marvel, but figure we bring that up. So anyway, let's talk about our top 3. Brian, do you want to start with your number 3 moment of the year?
Sure. So my number 3 is a show we actually did a while back. We did an episode about this show, which was Cobra Kai. Was that on your make your top 3?
I knew that had a season this year, but I'm like, I don't think there's any specific moment that I was like, oh, this is so good that it beats other ones.
I think I've mentioned this when we did that episode. One of my favorite moments is the kind of like redemption, the turning point when Hawk kind of like turns back to the side, to like the side with his friend Dimitri.
Sure.
So the Cobra Kai kids, like the ones who are super hardcore into it, who followed the mentor Kreese, they kind of just turned into these giant like jerks, and like all they care about is like Cobra Kai is number 1. Anyone who's not with them, like there's no limits to what they'll do. And the best example of that is this kid. I forget what his actual name is, but he goes by Hawk because
I think it's Eli.
Yes, Eli.
Yeah.
He has like this lip deformity, and so in order to get to that, in order to get that to be not what he's known for, he takes on this whole identity where he gets a tattoo and he dyes his hair and turns his hair into this big hawk mohawk, and it's just kind of he just kind of turns into this raging douche the whole time. There's one where he breaks his former best friend's arm.
Yeah, that was also in season 3.
Yeah, but then at the point where there's this all-out brawl, which if you're even to say, oh, it's that one scene where there's an all-out brawl, you really have to be more specific. show.
This is the Christmas one at the home of Danielson.
Yeah. I'm feeling I'm not doing a great job describing it, but it got to the point where his cohorts, his guys at his side are holding his friend Dimitri back again, and they think he's gonna all set up to break his arm again. But instead, he does this crazy like spin move, takes out the guys who are holding him down, and basically says like, "Hey, I'm sorry for everything. You want to take him down with us?" And he switches sides, and at that moment, like you see the look of relief and the look of like, "Oh my gosh, my friend's back" on Dimitri, and then seeing those two who had been at odds for like over a full season, I think, finally like fight together was actually really cool.
Yeah. 2 seasons really. Like in the first season was when he adapts like the Hawk persona, and he's still friends with Dimitri in first season, but it kind of like you can tell things are separating, and Eli and Dimitri are just like, this is not working for us. And so second season is when they aren't really that good of friends. And so Dimitri joins LaRusso's gym, and he's able to like stand up to him in the finale of season 2 and kick him into the trophy case. And then Eli takes that super personal and just like makes it his mission to go after Dimitri. And then you're right, there's that great moment of redemption. I was thinking like if I was going to pick a scene, it would be a lot more low key from season 3, because the one that I thought of was like, I really liked when they brought Allie back. And I liked even just the dinner that they had with Allie and with LaRusso and Johnny, where all three of them, they were a little bit of like their former selves, but also that Allie was like, you guys are friends. Like it was not, I mean, they were never really friends, but it was like, you guys are very similar, and you keep wanting to blame each other and say all of my problems are because of you. It's like, no, you guys keep instigating it together, and you're not in high school anymore. And it was just a lot of fun. I really liked that scene. It was a very mature scene in my opinion, and I thought it was great to have Elizabeth Shue back for that.
I think that one might have been more significant for me if I had seen the Karate Kid movies, which I've still only seen part of one of them, so it didn't have that same weight for me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I remember the first one. I don't think I saw any of the other ones. I remember the first one, but it wasn't anything that stood out for me. But I don't know. I just like the character development. But we'll see more character development in Cobra Kai, because by the time this episode comes out, Cobra Kai season 4 will be on Netflix.
When does it drop?
December 31st.
All right.
I know. So if you're like, that sounds pretty cool, well, now's your time. Get into Cobra Kai. Hopefully season 4 kicks butt. No pun intended.
You intended that pun.
I didn't. As I was saying kicks butt, I'm like, oh, kick it. Karate. Got it. That's fun. All right. So I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit. Anyway, so my number 3 is from a show that I'm sure I would imagine you have maybe this show on here. Did you have any of This Is Us?
I do have one, yes.
Okay. So I really love shows that will make me cry, and I love shows that'll make me laugh. And so when I'm looking at moments, I'm like, what is some of the most emotional or hilarious moments of the year? And there was just like a really emotional ending to an episode that it wasn't like anything big happened, but it was just the metaphor of what they were going for in this episode. And so the episode was called The Ride, and the episode was it showed all of the different families coming home from the hospital with their new babies, showing like how they had that ride home and what the drive was like. And there was different stories that you saw, like, Randall and Beth had one. They stop at Dairy Queen and Randall kind of puts his foot in his mouth. I really liked the Jack and Rebecca one, where they get home and Jack doesn't want to get out of the car because he doesn't want to be like, we find out at the end of the episode, he doesn't want to be like his father. It's like, now that the kids are here, it's real for him. And like from the moment they step out of the vehicle, he's already the dad, but it's like their life begins, and he has to decide like how he's going to be, and he's just so afraid that he's going to be like his dad, who he like describes as he sucked the air out of the room, that it was torment for his dad to be in the same room as him and Nikki, which is just sad to hear that a kid would ever develop that. And so, Rebecca's like, you're not your dad. And so then like they put on a song before they exit the car. And that song is Everything I Own by Bread. And it is just a great song that like will tug at your heartstrings, because it's like, it shows then Jack in the car with his kids throughout their life. And the end of the episode kind of compares this, like the drive and that ride, to being like your life, that, life is made up of these series of rides in the car. And like it shows Jack being a good dad with his kids while in the car. And then it ends in that flash forward where they're at Rebecca's deathbed and someone's pulling up. But we see Deja and her sisters show up at there, and Randall's talking with them. And so Randall, part of that metaphor, he's like, "Oh, did you have a good drive?" She's like, "Yeah, but it always goes faster than you think," when she's talking about the drive. And it's like that just solidifies that whole idea about about life and that drive. And just the whole little montage was super well done, and my wife and I are crying as we're watching it. And it's just like, we want to be these good dads and good parents and having good lives with our kids. So very poignant.
Is that the same episode where it also jumps back to showing like Jack's dad at the hospital when Nikki was going to be born? He's like a super nice guy at that point, or is that a different episode?
I think that might have been a different episode.
Okay.
I didn't rewatch the whole episode, so it's hard to remember completely everything that happened, because I know that Kate and Toby, they also are coming over from the hospital in that one. I don't remember anything that happens with them in that episode. So,
well, that whole carrying on from how your parents were is such a big thing in This Is Us. Either the Jack's kids idolizing him, and then obviously you have Jack and some other characters who have bad dads, kind of wanting to kind of almost reverse the curse kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I bring that up because that's also an interesting one, because we've seen hints and flashbacks that Jack's dad was like a really nice, genuine guy when his kids were like being born. And then now we jumped when they're young adults and he's, just a complete jerk, doesn't like his kids. But I don't know if we've ever seen like what happens in the middle. Like, when did that switch happen when he went downhill?
Yeah. So
I'm guessing we might dive into that, because there's really no point in bringing up that mystery if you're not going to solve it. Was this lost?
Stop it. Lost isn't that bad.
No, but it did have some mysteries. We did a whole episode about mysteries that should have been solved, so we won't go into those now. This isn't that episode anymore.
Gosh, you just bring your baggage into these episodes every week, Brian.
As I was talking, like it's like a Lost reference. Like, am I going to make it? Yep, I am.
I have to. It's just who I am. If you're Brian, you make Lost references. It's what you do.
Do I make them more than you, or are we pretty much even on that?
I mean, we're probably even.
Okay.
I think that's a fair.
All right. So stick with This Is Us. I have a different This Is Us moment.
Okay.
And it's a moment that I think kind of finally addressed something that I think it probably had been addressed, but never really as blatantly before, which is the whole awkwardness of Miguel having married his best friend's wife, basically.
Sure.
And it's the scene where Kevin and Nikki and Miguel are doing some wedding planning for Kevin's wedding. And there's all this tension between Nikki and Miguel. And Nikki's just like kind of treating him like crap and just blatantly says like, "Oh, are you the guy who's nailing my brother's wife?" That kind of thing. And then Miguel has this great moment. He's like, "The only person I owe an explanation to is the one person I can never give an explanation to." And then we get the flashback of Miguel kind of standing up for Jack to Rebecca's dad when Jack tries to get his future father-in-law's permission to ask Rebecca to marry him, and he says no. And kind of showing that, reinforcing that Miguel was always on Jack's side. Miguel was not a snake. He was not like waiting for his chance to be with Rebecca. He was, he's the one who stood up to Rebecca's dad, and basically said like, "You want this guy as your son-in-law? Like, there's nobody better than this guy," and just kind of stood up for him, and it just kind of like I kind of said address that because it always been kind of like it's hanging over, like, oh, like what's up with this guy? Like he married his dead friend's wife, but like you could really see that it was never like that. Like it really was completely disconnected, completely platonic, until Jack had already long been out of the picture.
Yeah. I feel like they do deserve to give Miguel more of those moments because he's a great character in that regard, because we talked about it a couple moments ago that everyone idolizes Jack, even Rebecca. And there's no living up to perfect, like Jack sure was a good guy, but we also saw he had some flaws, and if he would have continued to live, like he still would have been a good dad, a good husband. We know that, but he also is a flawed person. That's just how it is. But when you die, like I think that's so intentional with This Is Us, and it's almost like they probably shouldn't have included stuff about his alcoholism because like I feel like the show wanted to be like, we're only going to show you the good stuff because that's what we do when people die and they're a decent person. If someone's like a terrible person, yeah, you only remember the bad. But if they're at least decent, you tend to only remember the good. And you just kind of get the bad out of your head. And it's like, that's kind of what is going on with the kids. Like they only remember the good stuff of their dad. And so it is great to see Miguel be that character. He's like, yeah, that's kind of a soft spot. Like he says that in a couple seasons before that, when there's like the in-laws hanging out, and then someone brings that up about like him not being Jack. He's like, careful, that's one of my sensitive spots. I don't remember exactly how he says it or how it comes up, but he mentions that, and you see that he is a little insecure about it, and I totally understand why you would be. But he is a good guy. You never have reason to not like Miguel. He's never is the center of the drama at all. So you're right. That's a good moment, and I would love to see more Miguel. And I think with Rebecca dying, which is probably what's going on here, that we're gonna maybe see more of the Miguel Rebecca relationship this final season. I think that we should.
Well, and there's also it's got to be intentional that when they're in the future, you mentioned Rebecca's deathbed in the future, that we don't see Miguel. I think it's got to be intentional people that they haven't shown us in the future yet. Like we haven't seen Kate in the future, and we haven't seen Miguel, and I think that might be the only two at this point.
We haven't seen Jack, I think, either. The Kate's and Toby's kid.
No, but Toby Jack did mention him. Toby said Jack's on his way.
Yeah. So speaking of being on the way, and so the episode that I talked about, the ride that it ended with someone pulling up in the car after Deja and her sisters got there, that they didn't show you who was in that next car. And it's just like, oh, there's another person, and done. It's like, oh, okay. I mean, it's probably Kate. It's probably Kate and Jack, but
yeah. Well, maybe. And now we realize that the reason they didn't show Kate was probably because the season ended with showing that Kate and Toby are going to get divorced because they show Kate getting remarried. So that's probably Kate with her new husband showing up, and that's why they didn't reveal it. It's my guess.
Yeah. Jeez. Way to just come on. I love Toby. What are you doing here? This Is Us. Oh well. Well, my number 2, I'm going to go with the Marvel one for number 2. So again, 5 shows. And even if I was to narrow it down to a show, which I'll narrow it down to WandaVision, because I think WandaVision out of the 5 is still my favorite. Hawkeye was really good. That might be my number 2. But WandaVision was so great. I loved it. I thought it was so
mine is
original.
also from my number 1 is also from WandaVision. So let's see if it's the same scene.
And there's a lot of really good. I could pull out like maybe 2 or 3 that are completely good to be your top for the whole year. I really liked what they did, this little reveal. This is the first Marvel show reveal that they did. So they had, if you aren't familiar with WandaVision, that they kind of did it like a sitcom. And they have this next door neighbor named Agnes, who, as the show is going on, you realize that there's some weird things happening with this town they're in. and with Agnes, the background character, the next door neighbor, and we find out Agnes is actually a bad guy named Agatha Harkness, this witch who the spell that Wanda cast does not have any sort of power over her. And so, even though it's technically incorrect, they have this reveal where they do this song called Agatha All Along, and it shows Agatha through the different episodes of how she was influencing things or how she wasn't influenced by Wanda. And I just really loved it. I thought that was a great reveal. The song itself was so much fun. And it was, even though, like, if you know your Marvel lore, you probably saw that coming. I was like, yep, there it is. I saw it coming. But still, it was a really good reveal. And the fact that they did it with just a peppy, upbeat sitcom song was really good. So my second best moment is Agatha All Along.
That's another really good one. It also showcases the great talent of Catherine Hahn. Like, she's such a good actress. She can, like, keep you engaged. And it's like, it's not, like you said, it wasn't a huge surprise that Agatha was involved. Like, they really kind of showcase that heavily without showcasing it. But it was still like a really cool reveal because we're kind of revealing it finding out along with Wanda. So, like, even though we're not surprised, we kind of are, because we're like Wanda proxies as the audience.
Yeah, and technically it was Wanda all along, but still, Agatha was there. She was a part of all of this. So
yeah, we still don't know exactly, like, was she just in the town when this started happening, or did she go to the town because she saw Wanda messing with it? Or we still don't know all those details.
I thought that they established, I don't know if they said it outright, but I think it's canon of that she came to the town because she felt that power. Because when they're looking at, like, on the board, when they're looking at all the citizens of the town, they don't have Agatha's profile up there at all.
Okay.
I think they even have, like, a question mark on her where they're like, we don't know who this person is, where they're able to identify everyone else that's in the town.
Okay. That also shows powerful, because, I mean, her power, because she was able to enter the hex, which other people we've found out had, like, a lot of difficulty even just breaking that barrier.
Yeah. Yep. And now we're gonna get a TV show about Agatha. So
wait, we are? I'm down. I'm, like, not up on my Marvel knowledge.
I don't know when they're gonna do it, but that was the most recent, like, Disney Plus day. They also did, like, this announcement of all these new projects they're doing, and so one of the projects that they are doing is an Agatha House of Harkness show.
Okay. I mean, we always knew that she was going to come back. I thought she would just come back in. I mean, I feel like everything kind of points to, everything could be in Doctor Strange too. But, like, they can't resolve, like, every show in Doctor Strange 2. Like, they have to give him some storylines of himself because it is his movie.
Nah, it's fine. Oh, well, never mind. I was about to say stuff, but then I don't want to spoil Spider-Man, so I won't say anything.
All right, sounds good. Hopefully, by the time we record our next episode, I will have seen it.
Yes,
but we probably still won't spoil it because we don't know if you, the listeners, will have seen it. And
yeah,
this isn't a podcast about movies, because you already have one of those.
Correct. If you want to hear more thoughts about Spider-Man, obviously we do a Movies on a Monday episode about it, so you can jump over to that page. We had a lot of fun talking about it.
All right. I have not listened to that yet because obviously I don't want to spoil myself for the movie yet.
Exactly. I warned it right at the beginning. Like, we're going to talk about every single thing in this movie. So
yeah, well, I think that's the way to do it. I think it's better to just, because it's so hard to talk about something new without spoiling it. Like, well, all I can say is it's good, and that one scene where the thing happens, that's a good one. Rather just, like, spoil, like, just say up front, hey, we're going to spoil it. Don't even listen if you haven't seen it. Then it's on their fault.
We do it better than that. Oh, it was good, and then the person showed up, and they did good things too. We're better than that, Brian.
Are you?
No.
All right. So my number one is also from WandaVision. It's earlier in the season, though. It's also kind of a turning point. It comes from the 70s episode. So the show said it was going through sitcoms through the ages of television. So the first episode was all about 50s TV, then 60s TV, and then the third episode was about 70s TV. And this is where you had the character of Monica Rambeau, who had broken the barrier and was in, like, Wanda's world. And then this is when Wanda's having a baby and she's helping her, and she starts to kind of subtly bring stuff up about Wanda's life, because Wanda mentions for the first time, she mentions her brother Pietro, and Monica brings up, he was killed by Ultron, wasn't he? And you can see this like kind of anger and surprise and fear coming across Wanda's face all at once, because she realizes that something's out of her control. Like no one in this world is supposed to know about like Ultron or anything that happened outside the real world, because that's not part of her 70s sitcom that she's making everybody play out. Mm-hmm. And then that's when you get that whole like, who are you? And she notices the sword emblem, and she like basically jettisons her out of the hex completely, and somehow erases the broadcast, which I'm not sure who Wanda thought was watching, but I mean, to where like when they're watching outside of that, like it just kind of jumps to a cutscene, and then Monica's character, I forget what her character's name was within the hex, is gone. And it's the first time it's like, okay, Wanda's doing something with this. Like she's aware. Like before, there'd been little hints of the real world breaching Wanda through like the radio, and I think there was one other thing where something like kept happening. It was like the drone that turned into the little toy plane, but it was still unclear as to, was Wanda doing this or was Wanda a victim just like everybody else. This was the first one. It's because it kind of also just jump started the storyline of like, all right, now we're getting somewhere. Now we're moving somewhere. Because those first two episodes were really good and really well done, but it really is just living within a sitcom for those two episodes. Like nothing happens really to break that story.
Yeah. I mean, like in the second episode, you get a moment where it's just like, well, what just happened? Where it's like the beekeeper coming up from the sewer. And it's just no, and then like rewinds everything. You're like, wait, what? And so that's one of the things I really liked about those early episodes, because it's like, oh, everything's normal, everything's normal, everything's normal, everything's not, everything's normal, everything's not. Like it was great to just the weird juxtaposition that they had, and like there's some like YouTube stuff that you'll like, these ARG shows that are like kind of this idea where it's like, oh sure, things are normal, wait, no, it's not. It's like the psychological horror type aspect, and I really like that. There's also like some video games that are like leaning into that. It was like, oh, it's like this nice little front that you play, but the more that you play, you realize there's some really creepy stuff going on underneath it. I just love that whole idea of things not being what they look like. So I'm glad that they lean into that, and I think that might be why I liked all of WandaVision, where some other people are like, oh, it took so long to get going. I'm like, yeah, but the first stuff was pretty good.
Yeah.
And then I like where it landed too. Like I easily could have brought up like the ship of Theseus scene where Vision Vision. That's a great resolution for those two. Like, oh, we're not going to fight. We're going to have an argument, because that's the character of Vision. Or the final with Wanda and Vision, when they're like, oh, we found each other before. It stands to reason we'll find each other again. Or even Vision's line of like, what's love or what's grief if it's not love persevering?
Yeah.
You know.
Or even on a lighter note, anything with Jamie Woo and Darcy, they were great in that show too.
There's a lot of really funny stuff. Marvel has had some really funny things. Most recently, Hawkeye was I loved we're going to talk about Hawkeye in a little bit, but in a couple episodes. But I really liked the humor of Hawkeye. I thought that they nailed the humor and then the action together. I thought both of those were just fantastically done. If you haven't watched Hawkeye, go do yourself a favor and watch it. Even if you're like, I was never a big Hawkeye fan, it's fine. There's a new Hawkeye in it too, and she's hilarious. And then her back and forth with Jeremy Renner, and then her back and forth with another character that you'll see in the show is also really, really good.
You know, so I'm quiet because as we're recording this, I still haven't seen Hawkeye. But by the time we do our Hawkeye episode, I will have seen it.
See, that was another one of those instances where I didn't spoil anything, because I was like, there's other characters in it. I'm just going to say that. I won't tell you which characters, because you haven't
now
seen
I know it's not just Jeremy Renner doing a monologue. Like, you've shattered
exactly. I've broken this idea, the whole frame. Well, I'm actually surprised that my number one is not a Marvel show, but I'm like, no, this was such a good scene. It was probably top scene for me of the year, so I put it as my number one here. And that was from Squid Game. You know which scene?
I'm trying to think. Was it the marbles?
It was the marbles.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I the show definitely peaked at the marble scene. It's not like it went downhill after that, but that was the best game that they
Well,
did.
that's what peak means, Matt. Peak means it's the peak and it goes down after.
Yeah, but I like, you know, there's a difference between peaking and then like just a drastic drop off, and peaking and like, okay, this is top. And then the rest of it is pretty good, but
Yeah.
like it peaked. The rest of it was really good, but like this was the best that they had in the show.
I get what you mean.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad that you're taking those shots at me.
We make it so
Jeez.
easy.
We're recording in the morning. We usually record at night. But in the morning, Brian's feisty. He's angry. He wants to make fun of me. He hurts my feelings. No. So we talked about this like recently, so I won't really spoil it. If you have seen Squid Game, you know the scene I'm talking about. If you haven't seen Squid Game, you know that it has to do with marbles. That's it. But some really good emotional stuff happens in there, and we get a lot of character development as well. But especially as the scene ends and we see how it plays out and how things are resolved, that was super well done, and it really it got you. It was characters that you were endeared to. You're like, wow, I can't believe that they're making these choices.
Mhm.
And of course, knowing the nature of Squid Game, people die too, and so it was a sad moment as well.
Yeah, like we all knew that this was going to happen. We all knew that they were eventually going to have to turn on themselves. With this little like group of the protagonists, this was their first time that they really ever had to do that.
I don't know if you realized how you pronounce that word, but all of a sudden you say protagonists, like you're like like you're like sitting there with a banjo, down, protagonists, here they come. You're welcome.
Sorry, I got distracted by a voicemail that came through on my phone.
It's okay. I was distracted by my really bad redneck impersonation.
No comeback for that.
Nope, no one does. Did you have any other things that popped up that you're like, this was good, it just didn't make the cut?
Well, one of them it did because it's not exactly a TV show, but it's about a TV show, so it kind of counts. So if you have HBO Max, which Matt, you do because I watch things on yours.
If you do, you're not like Brian because he doesn't have it. He just watches it on mine.
There is a documentary that recently just dropped within the last weeks called Street Gang. It's about the origin of Sesame Street, and
I'm so sorry. Street Gang, and then it's about Sesame Street. Like I had completely different connotations. Like, what is this Street Gang that you're? What is this show? Oh, it's about Sesame Street.
Yeah, I wouldn't have called it Street Gang myself. I would have picked a less misleading title.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting because it shows all like the behind the scenes and like the political side and the drama that went into the creation of Sesame Street, which people don't think of. People think, oh, it's just a kid's show that's been on forever that everyone knows about. But the origin of it is really interesting because this was in the late 60s where people were realizing like these kids are just sitting at home watching TV, and can we use television to actually educate people? Like, and this is before any of that was ever done. Like, this was unheard of, and it was really kind of a fight to get the show on the air, and it just kind of shows all the hoops they have to jump through and what their mission and purpose of the show was. And it also is nice because it showcases people who you might not have heard of who were really instrumental in the show. Because I feel like everybody just thinks Sesame Street, Jim Henson with the Muppets. And of course they talk about Jim Henson because how could you not? But I mean, they also talk about like Joan Gans Cooney, who is kind of considered to be like the mother of Sesame Street, who was the one who got this idea going. Like, we want to use TV to educate people. And she was the one who had the idea, like, okay, we need to bring in Jim Henson and his Muppets to see if they can actually like help us with this. Let's talk about John Stone, who's one of the best like director producers of Sesame Street, who really helped the show become what it is. Joe Raposo, who's like one of the best songwriters who wrote some of the most famous Sesame Street songs. And just kind of like, I'm just kind of name dropping because I think these are people who people never have heard of, but who were so instrumental. And just all the different political backlash you can think of, because Sesame Street started in 1969, and there was a town they talk about, I think it's in Mississippi or some, where the local TV station refused to air Sesame Street because there were too many black performers. And it's crazy, like in the grand scheme of things, that wasn't that long ago, and how
Yeah.
Sesame Street was still kind of almost part of like the civil rights movement, and people recognizing like, no, we can actually have um, actual diversity. And this was it was a big thing for that show, because there was also a talking head interview with Emilio Delgado, who played Luis on Sesame Street, and he was saying like that for him, up until Sesame Street, the roles that he was getting as a, what do you call it? What's the term?
Hispanic?
Like, yeah, Hispanic. There you go. As a Hispanic man, he was getting auditions for roles of like drug dealers and gang members and stuff like that. But Sesame Street was the first one. Like, no, you're just like a guy who like owns a business and living your life. Like, you don't have to
But
be.
if you imagine that under the surface, he is also a drug dealer, it completely changes the show.
It does. So he's not a on the surface drug dealer, at least. That's what they're going
Perfect.
for.
That's what they want. We're like, let's have your drug dealing be subtle.
Mhm. But no, it's just interesting. And then they also showed when they're talking about the town not wanting to air because of the diversity. They showed Joan Gans Cooney saying like, well, at that time we decided that if being diverse was our worst sin, then I'm okay being a sinner. Basically, they're like, yeah, we're not going to bow down to like the outdated ideals of people who don't want the show to show on the air. And it's just really interesting. And I think it's, even if you're not a Muppet fan, which we've established that I am, I think it's an interesting watch. And so if you have the opportunity, go watch Street Gang.
There you go. Well, that could lead us into our trivia. But we have to talk about last week's trivia. You remember what last week's trivia is?
Yeah, actually, just before we started, I looked it up because I knew we would never remember it.
We never do because we're morons. What was last week's trivia?
It was your trivia, actually, Matt. It was
Yep, that sounds all right.
the Christmas episode of Everybody Loves Raymond, where Ray tries to make amends to his parents for the
Oh yeah,
Fruit of the Month Club. What does he get his father? And what he gets him is a CD player.
correct. Yeah, because he melted. When we're talking about amends too, like I can't remember exactly in the episode if it was him or if it was Robert, but I thought it was Raymond that he melted all of his dad's record, like jazz records that he had, because he left them too close to the radiator during winter, and they all got melted. And so, as a way to make amends of that from being that as a kid, he's like, "This is perfect. I'm going to get him all of his jazz records, but they're going to be on CD, and I'm going to give him this." Great CD player, and it's going to sound nice and cool and crisp. And so he does, but he sucks at it because he wants to surprise him when he comes home, and he has it on way too loud, and it just scares them as they walk into the door.
Mm-hmm.
And then Robert comes and saves the day because he actually has like the old vinyl that he gave the same gift, but he gave it on the vinyl albums that his dad loved. So
yeah, it's also just funny, like realizing the new technology that they're talking about is a CD player, which is like,
yeah.
who has CD players anymore?
And that also is like one of those very real things. Is like, oh, this is such good technology. Mom, Dad, I know that you've never had this before, but this is super easy to use. But then to them and their generation, it's just like, I have no idea what this is. And it's almost too much hassle to learn it. Even if it would actually be easy, it's too much hassle to learn it. I feel the same way with some technology. And I'm only 34. So, or 33.
You're not 30.
Gonna be
30. You're younger than me.
I don't know things. I don't know my age. I'm only 33. But like I know people who are on Discord and they're like, oh, join Discord. It's super easy. And I've gotten on Discord. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing here. I still don't understand Discord at all. And so I'm so sorry if you're out there. You're like, how do you not understand Discord? It's because I'm 33. I'm old. I don't have time to learn all these new things.
Like, I think I think there's a middle ground. I think you don't have to learn every new thing. I feel like it's okay to not know everything that's going on, but at the same time, you should also not be so out of the loop that you're like irrelevant. You know, when some people like oh, I hate all new technology. It's like, well, everything was new technology at one point. Do you want to go back to horse and buggy because cars are new technology? Like, you have to draw the line somewhere, but you don't have to know everything.
I am definitely going to be in like 30 years. I would put money on it. I will be like that crotchety old, like, oh, I don't have time to learn it. It's like, it's just pushing a button. No, I can't learn that button. I, your personality, Brian, even though you are more of a tech guy, I still could see you in like 40 years being like, all right, I've learned all that I need to learn. I don't need to learn new technology. I could see that happening.
Yeah, so to some point. For a while, I really I didn't like that DVDs were going out of style because I spent so much time and money collecting so many like TV show DVDs, and now it's like they're not out there. But I still watch them sometimes because they have like the bonus features and stuff. But it's just I'm realizing I don't watch them that much because everything I need to watch is a streaming somewhere.
For those of you who are young enough and don't remember this, there was a time too when we knew DVDs were going to get replaced, but we didn't know what the next thing was, and neither did companies. So that when they would release things on DVD, they would also release them on these two formats. One of them called Blu-ray that we have, and one of them called HD DVD. And so they're like, we don't know which one's going to win. So we're just going to have it on Blu-ray and HD. So you would see all these advertisements, these new movies when they're coming out on DVD, like, oh, and available on Blu-ray and HD DVD. And you're like, which one do I get? And there'd only be certain players for each one.
Mm-hmm.
And so then obviously we see Blu-ray won, but really it wasn't Blu-ray that won. It was streaming services.
Yeah.
That was like 5 years before that really shut off.
That debate was the VHS and Betamax debate of our time. And that got derailed by DVDs, and then DVDs got derailed by streaming.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we still do have Blu-ray, so it's like if one won, then it was Blu for sure.
Yeah. But I will say, like, as someone who likes getting DVDs of shows for all the bonus features and like deleted scenes and stuff like that, streaming shows, I think, could you do a better job at incorporating those? Like if you The Office is streaming on Peacock. I know they have some features, I'm pretty sure, but like if you really want to make the DVDs obsolete, take all the stuff on the DVDs and let us watch it somehow.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, you talked about Sesame Street. I just assumed that you didn't have a trivia. We didn't talk about this beforehand.
No, I don't have one.
Okay. So you talked about Sesame Street and it debuting in 1969. Guess what? There's another wonderful show that is still on today in a different format, to be fair, that debuted in 1969, also geared for kids. So what family-friendly show debuted in 1969 that we still have those characters around today?
Yeah, I actually know this one.
I figured you would. It's a great show. Mm-hmm. I find it funny that it's like that was such a big year, because you know what else happened in 1969? We went to the moon in 1969. That's when we made a landing that was lunar.
I was just about to reference the Even Stevens 1969 song.
I've seen like a couple of articles, like headlines about Christy Carlson Romano in like the last week. I'm like, what are you doing making news again?
She actually has a really interesting YouTube channel where she talks about, because she kind of went through some rough times where she didn't end up becoming as big a star as she was hoping for, because she was in a few big things after Even Stevens. Yeah. She was in Kim Possible and Cadet Kelly. Talking about her journey with her like losing her money and losing her fame and kind of like finding her way in life now. And she just kind of does these videos where she talks about different stuff. Like she did one about like why she was never really friends that close with like Shia LaBeouf on Even Stevens. And she seemed like a really level-headed person. So maybe it's good that she didn't blow up after that, because a lot of times when you do, you end up, I don't know, like Lindsay Lohan. But
yeah, sadly.
Yeah. So I don't know, that's an unofficial plug. Like if you ever want to, hey, what happened to her? Go watch her YouTube channel.
There you go. Not sponsored. All right. Well, hey, this is a fun episode, which, like I said, it's been a great year. For those of you who've been with us the whole year, we really appreciate it. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for joining us. Next year will be even better. We got some really good episodes. I don't know how we're going to top some of the episodes. Like our Office episode was so good. And I really loved, like, my new favorite, maybe outside of that, is the Christmas Carol episode we did 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That one was really good too. We've got some really good ones, and we're definitely going to have some good ones this year. We got a lot of good fun things planned. So
Yeah.
stick around. You made it this far. Why not? So anyway, until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
I'm reminding you to stay tuned and have a great new year.